do you plan to investigate President Trump's former FBI Director Christopher Wray? Yes or no?
I have no plans in going backwards. I have plans in safeguarding.
How about James Comey? Do you plan to investigate him?
Senator, every investigation will be subject to the same legal standard.
Do you plan to investigate James Comey, who's on your list?
I have no intentions of going backwards.
How about Bill Barr?
Intention of using the Constitution.
How about Bill Barr? Do you plan to investigate him, who's on your executive branch deep state, and you say you're going to ferret out the deep state?
No one
that
did not break the law will be investigated. I have always rejected any violence against law enforcement, and I have, including in that group, specifically addressed any violence against law enforcement on January 6th, and I do not agree with the commutation of any sentence of any individual who committed violence against law enforcement.
Do you think America is safer because President Trump issued these pardons to 1,600 of these criminal defendants, many of whom violently assaulted our police in the Capitol?
Senator, America will be safe when we don't have 200,000 drug overdoses in 2 years. America will be safe when we don't have 50 homicides in a day.
So you just won't answer the question.
Kash Patel, President Trump's nominee for FBI director, looks poised to be confirmed by the Senate along party lines after yesterday's hearing with the Judiciary Committee. Republicans look willing to stand behind the president's pick despite all those controversial comments and, yes, the enemies list published in his book in 2023. In his hearing, Patel walked back some of his most contentious claims, including that he would exact revenge on President Trump's enemies, and he broke with the president, in one way at least, on the decision to pardon all of the January 6 rioters, including the most violent of them. Let's bring in NBC News justice and intelligence correspondent Ken Dilanian, who's been watching this very closely for us. Obviously, Kash Patel, Ken, has been circled on the calendar as perhaps one nominee who is going to be tough to get through. But does it look like Republicans will come around here?
It absolutely does, Willie. In fact, it didn't seem from yesterday that they even need to come around. They're already there. We heard almost no skeptical questioning from Republicans. And the Democrats, I have to say, were frankly pretty disorganized and asked the same questions over and over again, particularly about Patel's involvement with a quote, unquote, January 6th choir, some January 6th rioters that he recorded a song with. They hammer that over and over again as if that's going to cause a Republican senator to vote against him. It just isn't. And as you said, he said all the right things, including distancing himself from the pardons of people who assaulted police officers and promising that the FBI wouldn't be political, would be focusing on crimes. So that was important, and that reassured any wavering Republicans, it seemed to me. But of course, there's what Kash Patel is saying, and then there's what's actually happening behind the scenes at the FBI, which are two very different things, guys.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it, Ken? Not just with Kash Patel, with so many of these nominees, that in those confirmation hearings, Republicans are willing to swallow whole what they hear over those couple of hours in the hearing, and not what he's said for most of his adult life, including in a book he published less than 2 years ago.
Yeah, that's right. And I think there's a contrast, actually, between the Patel hearing and the Tulsi Gabbard hearing, where Democrats were very focused and working together and asking the kind of questions that they knew would trouble Republicans. And you heard some very clear Republican skepticism in that hearing about Tulsi Gabbard. Whether they're going to actually vote against her is another question. But yeah, and in terms of Kash Patel, they were completely on board. It's also worth noting that Tom Tillis, one of the senator who introduced Kash Patel, sort of shepherded him at the hearing, was even stronger on the issue of the pardons. He said that he had been telling Capitol police officers that the pardons, quote unquote, sucked, and that the president must have gotten bad advice when he pardoned people who assaulted police officers.
So as we talk about the possibility of Kash Patel leading the FBI, Ken, you have some new reporting this morning on several top FBI officials being told to resign or face demotion. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, that's right, Willie. Depending on who you talk to, they've either been told they're facing demotion or will be fired. Although these are career civil servants, so they can't easily be fired. Look, there is a purge happening at the top levels of the FBI that is unprecedented in American history. Louis Freeh, when he came in the 90s, he sent a lot of people from headquarters into the field, but that was a different context. He was a career FBI person, hired under normal circumstances. Here you have partisan warriors who are doing this. There are people who are already in the director's office, one of whom worked for Jim Jordan, one of the FBI's most ardent critics. And what's really interesting is Kash Patel was asked about the possibility of mass firings by Senator Cory Booker. I think we have that sound. Let's play that.
Are you aware of any plans or discussions to punish in any way, including termination, FBI agents or personnel associated with Trump investigations?
Senator, just to be clear, I did not participate in any of those DOJ
Sir,
decisions.
that's a yes or no question. Are you aware of any plans or discussions to punish in any way, including termination, FBI agents or personnel associated with Trump investigations? Yes or no?
I'm not aware.
So within 2 hours of that statement, this purge started happening, and all of
I just watched some of Donald Trump's press conference about the tragedy last night, and it was disgusting. It was disgusting. First of all, our hearts go out to the victims' families, to the first responders. This is awful. But what is also awful is to watch the President of the United States stand up at the White House and claim that it is women or black people or Latinos working at the FAA that caused this crash. This idea that by hiring non-white men, you are putting the nation's safety in jeopardy, or that non-white men caused this crash, is unconscionable. We need to get to the bottom of what happened. Nobody's going to know today what caused that crash. But what we absolutely know is that it is not women working at the FAA that caused that crash. What we definitely know, it is not black employees at the FAA that caused that crash. There are some true things. President Trump forced out of office the administrator of the FAA. He's been waging a regular assault on public employees since he came into office. He forced the entire Aviation Security Review Board, Advisory Board, to step down. We don't know whether those things had anything to do with this crash, but we should take the time to get to the facts. And everybody in this country should be outraged that Donald Trump is standing up on that podium lying to you, deliberately lying to you about what the cause was, and further using the White House as a means to try to divide us from each other. That performance was disgraceful, and every single senator and member of Congress should call him out for how disgraceful it was.
Evidence, he said it was common sense. Is that common sense backed up by any facts?
It is not. I think we have to say first and foremost that there is zero evidence whatsoever that anything to do with the FAA's efforts to hire people of diverse backgrounds, people with disabilities, had anything to do with this tragedy. So I think this is one of these fact checks where it's like, wait, why are we even talking about this? But we're talking about it because the president started a national conversation about FAA hiring practices. So I think it's important for people to know a couple things. First of all, at that press conference, President Trump read out a sentence from the Biden-era FAA website about the FAA's desire to hire people with so-called targeted disabilities. Those are significant disabilities like psychiatric, intellectual issues, paralysis, missing extremities, and so on. What he did not mention, Pamela, was that that exact language was on the FAA website under President Trump, the entirety of his own administration. We grabbed a screenshot from December 2020, late in his first term. So this was not something Biden invented. In fact, it's been on that website at least since 2013. Number two, this was not just language on a Trump-era website. In fact, in 2019, under President Trump, the FAA launched a pilot program specifically to hire people with these so-called targeted disabilities, intellectual, psychiatric, etc., in air traffic control roles. So they emphasized at the time these people would have to meet all criteria in terms of medical criteria, qualifications, security criteria. But regardless, this was not something the Biden administration invented, as he suggested.
I also want to ask about timing, because the president said the articles he was reading from were from January 14th, just a week before he came back to office. And so they showed that Biden made a last-minute diversity push at the FAA. That's what Trump is saying. What is the truth here?
That's what he said. He's like, January 14th. So right before I came back, they were trying to get all these people in. I looked at where these articles he was reading out were actually from. It's January 14th, 2024, a year ago. So there is no evidence of some frantic last-minute Biden push to hire people with disabilities.
Said to us. One was that this trail was not about abortion, which was sort of ridiculous because that's the reason we were there to stop abortions, Rolíce said. To love the mother and children, but primarily to see if we could intervene and save the life of babies. And saving the life of baby, you often save the life of mother as well. Hello was among several protesters sentenced for participating in an abortion clinic blockade in Washington, D.C. in October 2020. Prosecutors argued that Rolíce and others forcefully entered the clinic, blocking doors with furniture, ropes, and their bodies. She was sentenced to 24 months in prison.